Hello everyone. I think we're just waiting for the behind the scenes stuff to get sorted. So I'm just going to rearrange my table a little bit so you've maybe got a better view. And at exactly 10:03, I can start to talk as if I'm actually here. Until then, I hope you've had a lovely morning. I have. I've been fluffing around all over the place, getting everything ready. Doesn't feel quite as stressful as the last two because I just love making ghee. So when you're in your natural habitat, which my kitchen is becoming more and more, then you feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm just going to check my volume setting because I'm standing away from the computer a bit. Oh. I've actually lost myself. This is not good. It says I'm talking. Oh, I've got to start my video again. I'm sorry. I'm back with you. Well, that set the heart racing. But we've still got another minute, fortunately. I just want to do what I started to do, is check my volume, maybe turn it up a little bit. Check the screen angle, so make sure you can see the ghee pot without chopping my head off. And here I am. That'll do. All right, we've still got a little bit of time. One thing I would ask you to do is let me know who's here. And if you've got any questions throughout, I will try and let you know and answer them as we go once I've got the ghee started. So say hi, and if you're not from around Newcastle, you can let me know where you are. Hi Julie, hi David, nice to see you. And we're at 10:03, so we're going to get started. Welcome to my kitchen. This is my third session with the Health at Home series, but I was just saying I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable about this one because the kitchen is more and more my natural habitat, and I love making ghee. And my intention for this session is to get some ghee converts if you are not already so. Some of you may be lapsed ghee makers. Wherever you're coming at from on your ghee journey, I hope today is of some value. Now, you don't need to make a whole lot of notes because me being me, I've made a nice little handout for you, and I will work out. That's going to be in my Dropbox. So what I'll do is I will, I'll be able to see who's here, or I'll put it up on my Aware Wellbeing site. I'll put the PDF up on my Aware Wellbeing site, and you can go there to access it. So that's on Facebook, Aware Wellbeing. Good. All right, let's get started. First thing with making ghee is to have your butter. Choose organic, ideally, and we're fortunate these days that both Woolworths and Aldi have started to stock a unsalted organic butter, and you do want also unsalted because you don't want the salt, you want a pure fat that's got no additives to it. And the salt in a salted butter, it does turn out a little bit differently. I've experimented with it a couple of times. So if you can get the organic, that's great, but definitely unsalted. So you want a heavy based saucepan, something, because it is susceptible to burning quite easily once it gets to the point of being cooked. So a nice heavy base is important. You pop your butter in. Now I've got 500 grams in there, which is two 250 bricks. So that's in, and I'm using my little camper stove today so that you can see this, because my kitchen's not very well, my stove's not very well located in this kitchen to do a demo. Sometimes I can't control the flame as well as I would like with this little cooking stove, but generally you'll melt your butter over a medium heat, and then when it's all melted and it's starting to cook, and you'll know when that happens because you'll hear the bubbling, you'll hear the water starting to cook out. You'll turn it down to a low temperature. Generally, it will take about 20 to 25 minutes for that 500 grams. When I was at the ashram and I would make 5 kilos at a time in a great big pot, it might take me a couple of hours to cook it at that low temperature and have it work through that cooking process. So it does depend on how much you are going to be cooking. I'm just ducking out of the picture for the moment to show you. If you're cooking the 500 grams, these are the Pyrex lid containers that you buy with the blue lid. That's a really nice size for 500 grams. I have my own personal little ghee pot, which a beautiful friend made for me. Thank you, Linda, up on the north coast. It's ceramic, has a little lid, and I also have a little ghee spoon that I keep in the pot so that when I'm taking it out of my pot, I'm only using that spoon, because ghee can get spoiled very easy. It has a very, very long shelf life. But if it gets contaminated with water on a spoon or a dirty spoon, it will spoil. So it's a great idea to just have your own ghee spoon. So I melted this a little bit earlier, so we'll just let it continue now, and I'll let you know when it starts to bubble. Actually, it's starting a little bit now. So question is, what is ghee? Ghee is a pure butter fat, and it is what is left over after you cook out the water in butter, as well as all of the dairy solids that make it milk, I suppose. So the proteins, and that includes the lactose. So if you have a dairy issue, an inability or an incompatibility with dairy, ghee it's very rare when it's not. It's usually okay for everybody because it's got everything that made it dairy and made it difficult to digest taken out of it. It actually, we'll talk about the uses and benefits shortly, but it's really helpful for our digestion. So if you're willing to experiment, if you've got a dairy intolerance, ghee, I think, will be helpful. The only people who probably won't want to eat ghee are those people who have made a life choice to be vegan. And, respecting everybody's life choices. For me, as an Ayurvedic practitioner and understanding the benefits and the qualities of ghee, my life would feel not quite so complete if I didn't have ghee in it. However, I do make sure that my product is as high a quality and ethical. And that is why I only use organic butter, because when you're a non-organic butter or an organic butter, you're more likely to be assured that the cows haven't been grass-fed, because if they're grain-fed in enclosures, they develop inflammation in the gut and they need to be fed antibiotics. And often they're fed hormones to increase their milk supply. So an organic butter, you know, you're getting a better quality that the cows haven't have been subjected to that. You know, in the old days, the ideal was, you know, you went out and milked your cow, you waited till the cream came to the top, and then you churned your butter from the cream, and then from that butter you could make your ghee. And, you know, traditionally that's how it was done. I was very lucky last year for my 60th birthday, my friend Coralie gave me a butter churner. So I'm just waiting to access some good quality cream so that I can do it, but I love having it there on my shelf one day. So because all of those milk solids are cooked out, and I don't know if you can hear, I'm going to hold this down just so you can, there's a little bubbling happening there now with the ghee, and there's a white foam that has come up to the top. And that's the start of the separation of the milk solids. The bubbling is actually the noise of the water as it's being cooked out. Water has a lower boiling temperature than the fat. So the water cooks out, and then how I tell when ghee is cooked and how you can make sure that you're going to get a ghee that is going to last for quite some time on your shelf is that it will go quiet when it's cooked. So I don't do it by time, and I don't do it necessarily by colour, I do it by sound. So when the ghee is quiet, you might see some little bubbles moving around, but they're very faint, or they're very fine, and you've reached the point there where it's cooked. The other indicators of when it's cooked is that there will be a brown filmy crust on the bottom, and it'll be quite a dark brown crust. And then off over the top, you'll have a very thin crust. And when it's finished cooking, what you do is you strain your ghee. So what I do, I've got my little ghee pot here. I just use a cotton hanky, but you can also use muslin. I pop it over the top of my little pot and I dip it in the center, and then I just put a elastic band around it to make a little well in the middle of it. And then when it's cooked, I'll just pour it in there. Once you've poured your ghee into the pot, it's a good idea not to put the lid on, just to, you can lightly cover it, but cover it in something that it can breathe through, because it's really important that you don't get condensation from the heat coming off the ghee, because then that's going to put water back in it, and that's when it's likely to spoil on the shelf. So you want it to be nice and cool before you put your lid on. And then we do not store ghee in the refrigerator. And unfortunately, you see ghee for sale in the refrigerator. And if you ever buy some ghee, certainly at the supermarket in the fridge, and you bring it home and you smell it, it does not have the beautiful caramel smell. I'm just going to turn this down a little bit now because I'm boiling away nicely. I'm just going to make sure I haven't turned it off completely. I think I did. The art of cooking on a camp stove. Sorry for the loss of my head for the moment. There we go. I think I've got it down as low as we can go. So it's bubbling away, and as I said, it may cook a little bit quicker today than I usually like to take to cook it. So back to the nice caramel smell. You're really only going to get that with a homemade ghee. I've tried lots of bought ghees, and you know, there's nothing nicer than homemade, and so I'm hoping that today inspires you to make your own ghee. But you will leave it on the shelf. In winter, it goes very hard and it's cold, and in summer it melts, and both are fine. You just use it. I keep my ghee pot beside my stove, and it's there whenever I need it, because I cook everything in ghee. And even when butter is called for in baking, depending on how much ghee I've got on hand, I will often substitute the ghee for the butter in the recipe. And it's just so lovely and light in the cooking, and it adds a beautiful flavour. And most people, once they've experienced cooking with ghee, they really do notice and taste the difference. So now it's time to talk to you about why it's important, or why ghee in Ayurveda is known as liquid gold. In the same way gold is revered in the family of metals, ghee is revered as a food in the world of food, or the family of food. And that's because of its unique composition. It's very light and it's easy to digest. It's cool and it's sweet. And it's used widely both as a food and therapeutically. So I've got on your little handout, I've got all of the things that make it wonderful, and I'm going to talk to those now. And as well, in your handout, I've got a couple of pages of the remedies that we use ghee for. I mentioned that we use it therapeutically. So you'll have some home-based remedies to explore and have fun with. So at the moment, I'm just inhaling, which is what it's suggested that we do with ghee. Cooking your ghee can be a beautiful meditative process. Standing over it and listening to the bubbles. I wish you were here to be able to hear them. And to smell. The foaming on the top has stopped now. And so we're about 10 minutes in from when I probably started to melt it. And it's bubbling away nicely, and the film on the top is starting to form. But already there's a beautiful caramel smell coming from it. So let's start to talk about why ghee is worth using. As an oil, it retains its nutritive value at higher temperatures than other oils. It is one of the highest oils. Coconut is also high, but coconut is a very heavy oil, and it's the lightness of ghee that makes it easy to digest. It's rich in antioxidants, and so it takes a long time to oxidize. And it aids in the absorption of all vitamins and minerals, which is why it's a good digestive, but it also is high in vitamin A, D, E, and K. So you get vitamins from it, and it helps you absorb the vitamins and minerals that are in the rest of your food. It's also more easily metabolized, and it acts as a digestive aid. And it does this by stimulating and balancing the secretion of stomach acids to help with digestion, and also to maintain and repair the mucus lining of the stomach. Which is why, if you've ever heard of the Master Cleanse, or in yogic speak, Shankaprakshalana, which is the saltwater cleanse of the digestive tract. You drink about 3 to 4 litres of salty water at a particular ratio that matches the ratio of salt to water in the body. And that completely flushes out the digestive tract until you're passing clear water at the other end. So everything's beautiful and clean. But it's also removed the lining of the stomach. So the very first meal that you are having, that you have after we do that cleanse, and for the next week, is virtually floating in ghee. And really we eat khichdi, which is mung dal and rice, basmati rice cooked together. It's a very easily digestible food. And that's really the vehicle for the ghee. The ghee is what's important, and it's important because it does just that. It restores a brand new mucus lining to the gut and all of the good bacteria that comes with that. It also helps to lubricate the connective tissues. So as yogis, we love it because it actually improves our flexibility. It's got a high concentration of the short chain fatty acid known as butyric acid, B-U-T-Y-R-I-C, Now that acid helps to control metabolism. It helps control inflammation, as well as plays a part in the stress response and the release of cortisol, or the buildup of cortisol in the body. It's got antiviral properties, and it's been shown in research to improve insulin sensitivity. So that's why ghee, it's suitable for everyone. Doesn't matter if you've got a weight or a cholesterol issue. 1 or 2 teaspoons a day helps everyone. If you don't have any of those issues, like me, and perhaps have a dry constitution, which is what I do, I tend to suffer from constipation, dry cracked lips, dry skin, particularly at this time of year in autumn. So I might make my porridge in the morning for one person with a tablespoon of ghee. I'll start my day with a teaspoon of ghee in hot water. And my body just loves ghee because it needs that oleation, is what we call it in Ayurveda, that internal oleation. But even if you think fat is your enemy for a number of different reasons, 1 to 2 teaspoons of ghee is very beneficial. Now, you can't hear it, but it's starting to go quiet. So the water is starting to have been released, and the film on the top is getting a little bit more solid, and it smells divine. So let's keep going with the benefits. I've talked about the fat-soluble vitamins that it contains, A, D, E, and K, and they're responsible for strong bones, brain health, as well as strengthening your immunity. In Ayurveda, ghee is recognized for what we call its penetrating quality. It's very fine in texture. And so it gets carried through the body very easily. And so we use it as a vehicle for herbs. Taking herbs with a teaspoon of ghee in warm water, and it just helps carry those herbs into the interior of the cells where they give the most benefit. The other way we use it, in particular in Ayurveda, is for our cleansing process, the first stage of that. That's known as panchakarma. Pancha is 5 and karma is action. And so there's 5 steps or actions in this cleansing and re-nourishing process. And the very first one is to loosen up and release the toxins that are being held within the tissues of the body. We do that in 2 ways. We do that with an external oil massage, but we also do it by ingesting quite large amounts of ghee. And it's a bit like when something's hard and impacted and dry, it's really hard to get out. But if you soak it for a while and soften it, then it releases easily. And that's what the ghee is doing internally within the system. It's going into the cells, it's sitting there, it's softening everything up so that when we do the next stage, which is the steam, the swaha, the steam then picks up those toxins, the heat in the body, and carries them out. I've just had a question. I notice you're not stirring it. You never stir ghee, David. Ever, ever, ever. Now I can see your face sitting at home with that, but you do not stir your ghee. It's a bit like absorbed cooking rice. You just let it sit. If you're just, the little bit that you'll get around the edges is not important, but you do not want to get any of that residue from the bottom. He's saying, okay, I'm chastised. So we got that, everybody. Never stir your ghee. And I know when you watch it on YouTube, it will tell you to stir it. Please don't. It'll also tell you to take it off when it's not ready to be, when it's not finished cooking either. So these are your instructions for perfect ghee every time. So what else are we doing? Yes, so it's penetrating quality. Someone asked me when I did my live the other day whether it was good for the brain, and the answer to that is yes. It promotes all 3 aspects of mental functioning: learning, memory, and recall. And one really nice way to use it is to gently massage a small amount into your temples at night before bed to promote a nice peaceful sleep and just for the quality of the mind. The other thing that you can do of night, if your eyes are dry or red, is just put a little bit of ghee around your eyes. You know, having sterile conditions is an issue when I say this, but I even put a little bit of ghee inside the bottom of my eyelid, because I've had treatments with ghee for my eyes in India when I've done panchakarma, and one of the ones we use when there's eyesight difficulties is we do what's called a ghee basti. So we make a donut out of dough that sits around the eye and is perfectly sealed. You're lying back on your back, of course. And then that gets filled with ghee. Sometimes it gets filled with plain ghee, and other times it gets filled with ghee that have got herbs cooked into it. And your eyeball, your whole eye just soaks in that ghee. And it's the most amazing experience because, you know, when we've got water against our eyeball, it's quite irritating and you can feel it. When you're gazing up into a pool of ghee, because your eye is open, of course, there's no sensation at all. It's just everything's yellow. So I make sure I wash my hands first, of course, and my ghee is uncontaminated in my pot. But I quite happily put a little bit of ghee along the bottom of my eyelid for if my eyes feel particularly dry or red. But you can also just rub it around the outside and across your eyelid, and that will soak through the tissue into your eye socket during the night. So that's another. So how does it promote those brain aspects, Julie? Well, anything that calms the mind is going to support it. I probably can't give you a scientific answer for it, but I know myself, I feel calmer when I have ghee in my life. And one of the things that I didn't read to you, and I will now, I've got a quote here from a 16th century Ayurvedic text, and this is its description of ghee. Ghee is sweet in taste and cooling in energy, rejuvenating, good for the eyes and vision, enkindles digestion, bestows luster and beauty, enhances memory and stamina, increases the intellect, promotes longevity, is an aphrodisiac, and protects the body from various diseases. Bhava Prakasha, 16th century Ayurvedic text. Now, who doesn't want all that? And that's why, hand on heart, I have to say that my life wouldn't be complete without ghee in it. All right, so back to, because we're still going with the benefits. It's used to help with ulcers and constipation. I take it, if I'm taking any herbs like tripha, for if I'm feeling a bit blocked up, I always take my herbs with a teaspoon of ghee. But I'll also have a ghee tea, what I call a ghee tea, which is just a teaspoon of ghee in hot water before bed as well if I'm feeling a bit blocked. I have it early in the morning to just lubricate the body, because the body needs good quality oil for all of its workings. But I'll take an extra teaspoon of the night in hot water or in a spiced milk before bed, and that is really helpful in really just gentling and softening and moving everything along as it's supposed to. It's also really good for applying externally to the skin. Now we're getting to the very quiet territory here. I've got quite a nice crust over the top, but I'm still gently, little bubbles away, so we're going to keep going right to the end. So applying externally to skin conditions, particularly those relating to inflammation, and it also prevents scarring and blisters in burns. Now when you combine it with turmeric, it has powerful antibiotic and tissue repairing actions. You may or may not be able to see, but I'm a sort of a skin sun cancer child, in that I have quite fair freckly skin. That's the pitter aspect of me. I never really tanned, but I still persisted in lathering myself with coconut oil and lying out in the sun and getting sunburned. And now I pay the price, particularly on my chest and on the back of my hands. For years now, I have been using ghee and turmeric to make sure I don't need to go and get anything cut out. And I have it always on site, and it always heals it. I had someone that I did yoga with Coralie at New Living Yoga a number of years ago, and she was seeing me as a client, and she was saying that she'd had a biopsy, and she was going to have a skin cancer cut out of her chest. And I talked to her about ghee and turmeric, and she decided to give it a go. So for 3 months, she religiously applied the ghee to the area a couple of times a day, and she didn't have to go and have it cut out. I ran into her at the markets the other day, and she said to me, "I'm out of my ghee pots, and can you make me some more?" And so I have. And look, while I think of it, please excuse me, I'm just going to run and get those so you can see what I'm talking about. So the recipe for this is actually in the remedies in the handout. Now this little one the recipe is a tablespoon of ghee. So it's ghee that's finished and cooked, and then a teaspoon of turmeric. And you just heat the ghee, melt the ghee, put the turmeric in, and you just let them get to know each other. You're not going to have the ghee on a high temperature because you don't want it to burn. So cooked ghee can burn quite quickly. But you just let them get to know each other and sit with each other and let them cool down together. And then I just strain it through a very fine sieve into here. Warning, it'll make you go yellow. Turmeric does that. And this one is the same thing, but instead of using the powdered turmeric, I've used a turmeric essential oil. You can get the turmeric essential oil from Ayurveda. No, I just swish it around in the pan, David, for making that up. The stirring is not such a big issue there. So the ghee is cooked. It is perfectly quiet. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? You've got a crust on the top, and if I tip it to the side, I can see the crust on the bottom. And now I'm just going to pour it into my pot. The crust from the top will go off. Some of the crust from the bottom is loosening. You can see the crust that you're left with on the bottom. Okay. And it comes like, it looks like it's going to be hard to clean, but it's actually not. If you pop some water in that and then a bit of detergent with it straight away and let it sit, it'll clean up really easily. So I'm just watching the time. We're going all right for time. So this one's got turmeric essential oil. Did I say you can get it from Ayurveda? That's where I get my turmeric essential oil. So bioveda.com.au, an Ayurvedic product supplier based up in Mullumbimby. Beautiful products, very highly regarded. And this doesn't make you quite so yellow. So you've got a choice. But for the hardcore stuff, I'll tell you a story about the turmeric and ghee paste too. The other thing about ghee, and particularly if we cook herbs into it, is that its therapeutic value increases with age. The older it is, the more powerful it is. Now, a number of years ago now, when I was visiting my mother one day, and she had barked her shin out in the garden. She was in her 80s, and so her skin was soft, and She had done it some time before, but it hadn't healed. And it was big and it was red and it was angry and it was inflamed. And I think she'd had antibiotics and they still hadn't worked. I had made a pot of this when I was studying, and I think it might have been at the back of my shelf for 3 or 4 years. I went home and I got that pot, and I think it was the Wednesday that I put it on. And I went back on the Saturday. Mum kept putting it on. I went back on the Saturday and it was virtually healed. The skin was shiny and pink, starting to heal. So I have great faith in this little remedy, and I think it's something to always have in the cupboard. If you're not keen to make it yourself, I do make it and sell it. It's up to you. What brand of butter, Julie? You want organic. Now, Woolies have an organic butter now, and Aldi have an organic unsalted butter. But you can also get smaller boutique ones. It is expensive, and so you do want to make sure that you are watching your ghee like a hawk, because it burns and turns very quickly. And I have burnt ghee in my day. That's why I say just stand over it, smell it, listen to it, and be there for when it's cooked. All right. So that's your turmeric with your antibiotic and tissue repairing action. And yeah. So as I said, you've got 2 pages of remedies there, all little bits and pieces. I just went through and picked out the ones that I tend to use myself and have used with clients. And, you know, some of them have got a lot of other products in them, but the ghee is part of the ingredients to help with that penetration and carrying and the lubricating of the body. Other thing I want to just go back to and tell you a little bit more about is the composition of ghee, because, you know, sometimes people are horrified about having fat, but I think from a health perspective, one of the worst thing that ever happened to us was this myth that we shouldn't have any fat in the body, that fat was bad for us. And if you go back and you find out about that research, the basis on which that was concluded was ludicrous. And what it's done is led us to this sugar frenzy, because when fat's removed, there's no substance, a lot of the taste goes. And so sugar was put in to substitute what fat was offering in the food. And now we're all addicted to sugar. And it's the worst thing ever. And everybody's starting to realize that good fat is really important. I mean, our body is just like our cars. It needs oil to run well. We've got dry, creaky joints. There's not enough oil in our body. Our skin is dry. It's not just about putting it on the outside. We've got to ingest it, because we come from the inside out. So what we do on the surface can have a level of benefit, but what we put into our body is so much more important, because it's from that our body is actually built. Our food is a building blocks. The other little metaphor is, you know, when you think about fires, they go really well, but they pick up if you put a little bit of oil on them. And when we do a ceremonial fire at the ashram, we would always put ghee on. Now, the ghee promoted the burning of the fire, and I suppose the sacrifice that we were making, whatever our intention was. But our digestion is exactly the same. A little bit of oil is an essential criteria for good digestion. It keeps that digestive fire burning, and it softens things down. And so, yeah, fat is good for us, and ghee is probably the best fat for us. So ghee contains approximately 8% saturated fatty acids, which is what makes it easily digestible. The digestibility coefficient, or the rate of absorption, is 96%. So we're absorbing everything, which is, again, means that it's going towards the building of our tissues in a good way. It contains triglycerides, diglycerides, monoglycerides, phospholipids, and beta-carotene, and vitamin E, which are all antioxidants, and we all know that antioxidants are good for us. Now, why it's different from milk or butter is that the protein casein, which is what is seen to be hard to digest, is what is removed. So what made it milk is all cooked out. It's removed along with the water in the cooking process. It's what's sitting on the bottom of the pot now and what's sitting on the top of the strain. How to use ghee? Look, as I said, I use it. If I get a little bit on my finger, it goes on my lip as my lip balm. If my grandson has a nappy rash, it goes on his backside to cool the redness and take the inflammation out of it. I put it around my eyes. And the rest of the remedies. With cooking, as I said, I substitute it for butter wherever, if I've got enough to do that. But I always cook in ghee. I never cook in any other oil. Actually, the only other oil I use is olive oil if it's not been cooked. So if I'm making a pasta and I want to put some olive oil over when I've sort of got it in the plate and it's all thin. When I've cooked with ghee, when I serve it up in my bowl, I pop an extra teaspoon of ghee on top. It's gorgeous. How else? The way you use it, I melt the ghee. Again, as ghee can turn very quickly, so you don't want to have it at too high a temperature. The only time when you'll get it close, you'll come to that borderline is when you're popping black mustard seeds. You do want it quite hot before you put those mustard seeds in so that they're ready to pop straight away. I find if you put the mustard seeds in before the fat is hot enough to pop them, the fat will burn before they'll actually start to pop. So it's that contrast that helps them to pop and release their flavour. So you just melt it to a nice medium temperature. You put in your larger spices at that point. I'll always cook onion first if I'm using onion. I don't use it a lot, but if I do, the onion gets cooked first. Then I'll put in like the garlic or the chopped ginger or the chopped fresh turmeric. And then you put in powdered spices last because they're most susceptible to burn to high temperature. In fact, before I put in my powdered spices, I always put a little bit of water in just to soften the temperature so my powdered spices don't burn. If I'm making a curry and I'm using curry leaves, I'll put, and mustard seeds, the mustard seeds will go in first. Once they've popped, I'll put in the curry leaves, and then I'll put in my chopped ginger and turmeric. And then if I'm using any seeds like cumin seeds, whole, I'll put in the seeds, and again, the powdered last. And that sort of gives you a really nice progression. Yes, look, David, sometimes different butters, if I've used the home brand butters, they take longer, they cook up a different quality. Good quality butter is important. And we are at 10:43, so, and I have to finish at 10:45. So I've actually covered everything that I wanted to. Actually, I haven't said that you can use it in place of butter on your toast or on crackers. Whatever, you can use it for everything, and you should. So I hope that's been informative for you. And if you've got any questions, pop along to Aware Wellbeing and ask them. I think I've answered everybody's that has asked as we've gone. And look, just be with your ghee is what I'd probably leave with you as you're making it, and then enjoy it as you use it. All right, everyone, take care. Hurry on, Tatsa. So now I have to find out how to end this because my person at the back. So I'm just going to press stop to the recording. Bye, everyone.